If you're a furniture artist and you have been wanting to try a spray gun for your paint, I'm here to give you a little lesson because I know it can be a very overwhelming process to know what gun to buy, what compressor to buy, and how to get all your settings working in Mojo so that you can spray with professionalism and get the quality and the results that you're looking for. So let's dive in and let's talk about what guns I love, why I love them, and what the proper settings are, and just how easy it is to work with them. I absolutely love spraying my pieces. This kit comes in this handy little box, and it includes a mama gun for your big jobs, and it includes the baby gun for your little jobs. It includes a reusable cup for both the baby gun and the big gun. These reusable cups do work, but I love the 3M system. The 3M system works similar to Playtex disposable bottle liners, and that's what I prefer because it's easy cleanup, there's no muss, there's no fuss, and it's just amazing to get rid of the mess quickly. You're also going to get a gauge for your PSI pressure, which we're going to talk about in a minute, your handy little tools for cleaning your gun, and the handy little tools for changing the heads if needed. So let's talk a little bit about the PSI, the pressure, the compressor, and what all that means. If you've never used a compressor before, it can feel overwhelming, like I said before. So the one thing that you need to look at is your PSI levels. Every single tool that you have requires a different PSI level. PSI, very simple layman's terms, all it is it's the amount of compressed air, and it's how hard that compressed air is coming out of the compressor. So say your gauge goes from 0 to 150 on your compressor, right? That's the limit of the PSI. At a 70 PSI, that compressed air is going to come out at a certain level of force. It's going to blow out at a certain level of force. If you turn your PSI to 150, it is going to blow it out at a double amount of force. It's going to be coming out faster and harder. So what we need to keep in mind is that every tool that we have that hooks up to our compressor is going to have a different PSI setting depending on how much compressed air force that particular tool needs to function properly. Now I have an air gun which does nailers. That can't go up past a 72. If you have it go past a 72, one, it can damage the gun, and two, it can actually create binding and jams inside of the nail gun. So it's just bad to ever go over the recommended PSI. Now these zero gravity fed guns have a recommendation to use your PSI setting between 72 and 90. My particular manual on this one that came said don't go over 90 because you can damage your piece, right? So my sweet spot for mine is 72. Now in terms of setting the PSI, it's really easy. Most compressors will have gauges built into them that will control the PSI coming out of the little port, meaning that hose that hooks up to your tool. And you can just set the PSI on your compressor to have the accurate PSI setting that your tool needs. If you have a compressor that doesn't have that gauge, this particular set comes with a gauge. So if you're using an older model or more of a stripped down model compressor just because it was cheaper, there's nothing wrong with that. This gauge will have the PSI settings that you'll need, and you'll be able to adjust this gauge so that the amount of air coming out to your gun will reach this compressor will reach this compass before it reaches your gun. And that means that you can control the PSI on this little device. This device is going to control the amount of force that comes out of this and into your gun. Now, in my particular case, my compressor has a gauge built into it, so I never really need to use this. The reason I always buy these guns in a kit is because it's a freaking great deal because you get the mama gun and you get the baby gun. Occasionally over time, even if you're really good with cleaning these, they just get jammed up and gunky and they need to be replaced. The whole buy-in cost for this kit's $45, which is an amazing deal. And I probably replace my gun, in fairness and in full disclosure, I don't really clean mine as much as I should, but I replace my gun about once every 6 months, just to give you a guide. And I think like for the amount of work that I turn over, I think that's pretty reasonable. It's pretty fair. So let's look at all the parts that go along with the 3M system to start with so that you get a feel for what comes in the kit. The kit comes in these boxes, and they're not really labeled, but they come in this box. Inside the box, you are going to get a full, I have more liners than this that came in the box, but I've used them. But you're gonna get your liners, and you see what I mean? Like they look like the Playtex bottle, like drop-ins. So you're gonna get that in your kit. You're also going to get the tops, and the tops have strainers built in. So this means you no longer have to filter your paint before you spray with it. Like it's already all on here. And it also comes with these little covers. So this particular, mine's really messy, sorry about that, because I do high volume painting when I'm painting, but this is the little, like, we'll call it the Playtex bottle, like, holder. This is what it looks like. And it is made by 3M, you can see it there. So essentially this pops in there. You fill this with your paint, you add your water to thin it down for spraying, which we'll talk about in a second. You pop the cover on, and then you are ready to attach it to your gun. So the thing I love about these two, in addition to them being super, super easy to clean, because you just literally take out the liners and toss them when you're done. If you are in the middle of a paint job and you know you're gonna come back to it in a week or two, or you just didn't use all of the color that you had mixed up for your spray gun, they have these little covers that come with it that pop right on the top and keep this airtight sealed. So when you come back in 2 or 3 weeks, this will be usable. You can keep it on your shelf. You can see what color's in there. These cups ship separately. So I like to have like 10 of them on hand, because some of them I use for seal, and you're always changing out colors, and sometimes you want to store some on your shelf. So I buy an abundance of these. They're like $4 each, or used to be before inflation. I'm not really sure what they are now, but they're affordable. So that's what the 3M system looks like by itself. Now, to get these two attached to your gun, there's nothing on the gun right now that's going to allow this to attach. So we need to have this little doohickey. This little doohickey. I'm going to link all this over on my blog with links to Amazon, but here is the, this is the part number if you want to screen capture that if you're super excited. This is what this looks like. So it's essentially, it's a little bolty nut thing that just simply screws onto here. I like to use plumber's tape on mine because it creates a really tight seal, but you can see this has these little, I guess we'll call them teeth. And essentially your paint 3M system holds right into that. And then what happens is you hook your compressor hose into the bottom of the spray gun. You have your PSI set. The gun is going to be upside down, so all the air that is in here goes to the top. And then what essentially happens is you're going to go ahead and flip it around to get the air here. You're going to just pull the trigger, and you'll slowly see all the air will come out, and then it will start spitting a little bit of paint. And then that's when you're ready to actually use this for paint. Now the painting process is super simple, super easy, and I'm gonna do a video to show you what that looks like. Really quickly before we head to the shop, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the gauges that are on the gun. So this gun has 2 different gauges. Now we already talked about the PSI. The PSI, again, is the setting you set on your compressor that is going to determine the force of air coming out of the compressor, going into that tube and coming to your tool, okay? So then once you've got that set right, we know that there's going to be enough pressure coming into the gun that it's going to allow us to be able to spray. We're going to get great even coverage. Now we have to decide what we want the spray to look like. So let's chat about that. So right here we have 1 gauge, and you can kind of see that it's on a little dial. You can see where it's got narrow, and then it kind of graduates up to a larger end. So what this does is this controls the fan. So there's gonna be, if you have it set all the way down, we're gonna get like kind of like a spray that's gonna come out like this. Now the wider you set that dial, the greater the fan is gonna become. So we have the ability to spray a little bit like this, and then we can open it up so we're getting wider coverage. Now, if you're doing a piece of furniture like the buffet that's behind me, which I guess you really can't see it that well, but this buffet that's behind me, I like to have my spray probably set so it's covering about that much space at once. And when you're spraying, you spray a row, you let go of the trigger, and then you repress the trigger, and then you come back and you do another row. And every time you do that, you slightly overlap each row by 1 or 2 inches so that all of the rows of paint that you're painting will blend in with one another beautifully. Now, my Mermaid Mineral Powders, when used with Sherwin-Williams paint, which is my favorite, is a self-leveling paint when it comes out of the gun, and it's gonna cover and bond with your furniture. Amazing. Like, Mermaid Minerals help create this bonding agent with your paint that is phenomenal. And that is the spray fan that I like to have. This little dial right here is going to control the amount of paint that is coming out of the gun. So the compressor is controlling the PSI. That's controlling the amount of compressed air and the force of it coming out of the compressor into your tool. This is going to determine how much paint the gun is releasing at a given time. So once you have the fan set the way that you want it to the spread that you want it for the piece that you're working on, then you want to control the amount of paint that's coming out. So say you're painting something that's like a crib that has lots of spindles or a chair that has lots of spindles. In those cases, you're actually going to want the paint to kind of wrap around the piece. So to get that effect, what you're going to want to do is set your fan so it's only coming out about that much. And then you're going to want to up the pressure a little bit of the amount of paint that's coming out of the gun. So it's sending a lot of paint at a short fan speed, and then that short fan speed combined with your compressor setting is going to help that paint wrap around the spindles. You'll still have to move yourself around and do the sides and the back, but you will get really great even coverage on brown pieces. Now, if you're doing a larger piece like this buffet, which I also sprayed, you will want to have your the amount of paint coming out to be nice, even coverage, because you're looking for flat, even coverage. You don't want to be able to see where one row is thicker than another, like when you're spraying your rows. You want them to be even, and you want them to be evenly spaced, and then you want to be able to overlap each row and not have paint buildup. If you have this dial set so the paint is just boom, 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 like it's just coming at you like bullets, that is going to result in paint that ends up pooling or dripping and becoming nasty, and it's not going to be fun to work with. So what I like to do every single time I load my gun, every single time without fail that I put new paint in here, I have a scrap piece of plywood in my shop that I just leave against the wall, and I use that to test. So I make sure in between cleanings or after cleanings, specifically after cleanings, because that's when all your dials get messed up, that you make sure the fan is set the way you want it, you make sure the amount of paint coming out of the gun is the way you want it, you make sure the PSI is correct, and if those three things are working in harmony together, you can't mess up. Like, you can't mess it up, and your paint is going to go on fast and smooth. It's going to bond. It's going to be amazing. And the amount of productivity that you can do with the spray gun versus hand brushing things is amazing. And one of the things I will say too as a furniture artist is that I absolutely love Sherwin-Williams paint. It's my favorite paint to use with my Mermaid Mineral Powder. If you're unfamiliar with Mermaid Mineral Powders, check out my website for training videos, because it's an industry game changer and also saves you as an artist a ton of money. But I love using Sherwin-Williams paint with my Mermaid Mineral Powder with the right ratio of water mixed in with the gun. It bonds with my paint beautifully. I can do boho blends, and I can do glazing, like all those things that you love to do, you can still do with a spray gun. And let me just reference that for a second, because it sounds kind of crazy, like how do you boho blend with a spray gun? Well, this is what I love to do. I love to spray my base coat, let it dry, and then I come out with my artist brushes and all my blending colors, and I apply the blends on top of my base coat. Now, you can reactivate the minerals by spraying down the piece with a little bit of, like a spray bottle, a mister, with a little bit of water prior to starting your boho blend. And then it reactivates the minerals that are in the paint that you sprayed, so it becomes pliable and workable for boho blends. But it takes all of that initial work out of having to do a base coat. I know some artists will boho blend and do all those blending mixtures as they paint, but I'm a firm believer in making sure the quality of my work lasts for generations. And in order to do that, you have to make sure that your piece is properly prepped. And if you're just applying a thin coat of your one layer, and then you're boho blending that, your piece doesn't have enough paint to truly protect it. So I like to do a nice, generously coated base coat before I boho blend. Then I like to boho blend. Then I like to seal with my Seaside Seal. And if you're unfamiliar with Seaside Seal, check it out because it's also a game changer in the industry. It's heat resistant, water resistant, scratch resistant. You can spray, brush, or roll it. It's non-toxic, safe for family and pets, and it dries rock hard and crystal clear in record time, giving you the opportunity to be able to deliver your pieces quickly to your clients with confidence that they'll last forever. I will not use anything else on my pieces to seal except Seaside Seal. And even those brands that claim they include a top coat and you don't have to seal them, I still recommend highly sealing your pieces. If you don't want problems with peeling and chipping paint later, you have to protect your pieces. You have to protect all that love and labor that you put into them. And I would never deliver a piece without Seaside Seal because it gives me the confidence knowing that my piece will last for generations, and I know I'm gonna have zero customer service issues later. It just gives my clients a better peace of mind and a better piece for everyday living that you know is gonna last. Okay, so we're heading out to the shop. We're gonna actually be loading some paint in this and applying it to our furniture. So let's go see what that process looks like. In terms of buying compressors, I just wanted to give you a few little tips. So one thing I found is when I first bought a compressor, I was extremely intimidated by the compressor, like the buying of it, the using it, so much compressed air. I was just really nervous about it. And I think with any tool that you're using, there's always going to be a certain level of I'm uncomfortable with this until you get over the fear of what it is that you're using and you learn to use it in a professional setting. And once you take the guesswork out of how to use it, you're no longer afraid, and then it just becomes an asset to you to have in your toolbox. So when I first bought my very first compressor, I bought one of the little pot belly ones. So it was probably like this big. And I think it only held 30 gallons of compressed air. And that is just the amount of air that it has the ability to compress.
Mixing mermaid minerals into your paint pre-spray is super simple. You're just going to get the paint of your choice. My favorite is Sherwin-Williams. You are going to bring it home, open it up, pour it into your 3M System disposable cup. I like this handy dandy little painting tip here because it helps create like a little beaker, and then it's easier to pour out of the gallon jugs from Sherwin-Williams without making a huge mess. And then once you have that in there, you're just going to take, for this amount of paint, I just do 2 scoops of minerals. And then you do have to water down your paint for spraying, so I add probably 4 times the amount that I would normally use if I was brushing of water. You just kind of want to get a dripping consistency, but not a water consistency. Once you're happy with the consistency, you can put the top on the gun, take it over to a remnant board, check all your settings for your spray, and make sure it's spraying the way you want it to spray, and then just apply to your furniture in even overlapping strokes. This takes a lot of...
And it's going to leave you feeling super frustrated because it's going to kind of come out really soft mist. It's not going to feel like it covers very well, and that's going to be frustrating. So what I recommend if you're going to be using this for high volume work and you want to make a true investment in your shop, go for a compressor that one has a built-in PSI gauge to control the tools, because I think that's important. And 2, make sure that you buy one that holds at least 250 gallons of compressed air, because again, when you're doing those high volume paint jobs, you're gonna be frustrated by having to sit there and wait for a tiny compressor to manufacture enough air for your gun to work properly. That was what was happening to me, and it was causing a lot of frustration. So that's just my little tidbit on how to pick out a compressor. I also am definitely linking you guys to my whole outfit. I'll link you to the compressor I have, the 3M system, the gun that I love, and then I'm also obviously going to show you how to mix and how to actually spray with your gun. So let's go take a look at that in the shop. Okay, so we're in the shop. I have my reading glasses on because I've reached that phase of life where I can't see anything without them. We are going to take a look at what is involved in hooking your gun up to the compressor. So let's start with the gun, and then we'll go over to the compressor and I'll show you how to switch the dial. So here's the gun as we saw it inside the studio. We have this little end here, which is going to connect to our compressor. But it can't just go directly into the compressor hose because it needs to have an adapter added. So what you will need to have is this little bolt and this little adapter. These can be bought in kits on Amazon that contain several of each, and I recommend it if you're new to your compressor that you get one of the kits so you have all the little accessories that you need to attach many different things to your compressor. But essentially what we're gonna do is we are going to take a little bit of plumber's tape. We will wrap the plumber's tape around the threads on this. And we always want to wrap it going the opposite way of how it connects into the compressor itself. Now, plumber's tape, if you've never used it before, is thin like skin. Like if you've ever had a sunburn and it comes off, that's how thin it is. So essentially, you're just going to wrap it around there once, pull it, and just level it out with the seams. It's going to go directly into all the threads like that. Now, this is going to attach into this bolt. So you attach this end into the bolt like that. And then you're going to take a little bit more plumber's tape. You're going to wrap it around the threads on the bottom of your gun. And you're going to take this bolt, so you have the other end of the belt. Basically, it has two female ends, so each side will screw into something. And this end is going to screw into your gun. So you just want to hand tighten. So now you have the you have the gun going down into this bolt, and then you have this little adapter going into your hose. This is what the hose looks like. So attach it. All you're going to do is literally just take this end and you're going to push it in. You just heard it seal, and now it's like connected. It's not going to come apart. Now, if you want to take this off, all you do is pull. This has like a little spring in it. You just pull it down and the gun pops back out. Now, for my purposes, I always feel like when the compressor's on and it's fully charged and my dials are set and it's outputting compressed air to the gun, this button is a lot harder to push and to take off. And it can also feel, even though it's not scary, it feels like there's a really hard push of air when you pop this off when it's engaged with the compressed air. So I like to attach my gun with the compressed air shut off so that there's nothing coming out. It just makes the attachment a little smoother. Now let's go take a look at the gauge, PSI gauge on the compressor. These are the gauges on my compressor. This is the amount of compressed air that's coming out and becoming available to my tool. So my compressor right now is set to like 190. Now that's the amount of compressed air pressure I have access to. But this guide is going to be the one that controls my tool. Now remember I told you this has a max PSI pressure of 90. So what happens is you have this front lever that says turn to adjust. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna turn it towards the plus sign and then watch what happens to the gauge as we turn it. This is slowly starting to release compressed air into the hose. That's at 50 and we need it set to 72 for the purposes of our gun. So you can see right there, now we're set to where we need to be. So this is a picture of the compressor gauge that's going to control the gun. Now what we're going to do is we're going to push the trigger on the gun and watch what happens to the dial. Now this is the gun spraying, just air right now because there's no paint in it, but you can see how the gauge drops below 70, but it never goes above 70. That means that the gauge has been set correctly for my tool.
Mermaid mineral powders are an industry game changer, allowing you complete control over your creativity. They can be mixed with your paint, whether you're brushing, rolling, or spraying. Here I am mixing with my Sherwin-Williams paint. This is my handy little painting tip. I like to create a little beaker on my gallon jugs from Sherwin-Williams, so it creates less mess when you're pouring from a gallon jug. Once added to your paint cup, simply add a little bit of minerals to your paint with a little bit of water. Mix up thoroughly. I generally will add about 2 to 3 times the amount of water needed for a spray gun than I will when I'm brushing with my minerals. This gives the paint the ability to come out of the gun smoothly. Once mixed, just set your settings the way that you want them for the spray that you would like to achieve and then start spraying. Again, you're going to want to overlap your rows by 1 to 2 inches to make sure you get the even coverage that you're looking for. This will save you so much time and energy. Again, even if you're doing boho blends, this base coat is record-setting time. The sheen that you're going to end up with is gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's even coverage. It's self-leveling. Here's my final piece with all of my glazes and my stains added. If you haven't used Mermaid Minerals to create your own DIY stains, be sure to check that out. And then also check out Barnacle Binder, because Barnacle Binder can be used to create your own metallic paints, and that's also an industry game changer. Head on over to my website for more information on any of my products, and be sure to like and follow for more tutorials like this.